Hi, I'm Caroline, and I've created a lot of things, but mostly I've created a life I love. Join me on my journey as a podcaster, business owner, and mom as I try to create all the things. Welcome to the Caroline Creates podcast. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Caroline Creates podcast. I am your host, Caroline, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about why you should start a podcast. Just a little fair warning. I am home today and my husband is home, and that means that my kids are playing more today. We kind of do a light day on the days that my husband is home. For those of you who don't know, we homeschool. And they are running around pretending to be Jedis in the yard, in the front yard and the backyard, which means no space is sacred or quiet. So we may hear them on this recording, and I kind of feel like that is par for the course of what this podcast is. So I'm totally fine with it, even though the editor in me is So today's topic, though, is why should you or why would you want to start a podcast? So a lot of people kind of like the idea of podcasting, but they're like, well, I don't know if I should do it. I don't know what I would podcast about, or maybe I have a podcast idea, but I don't know if I should do it, if there are other people who are already doing it. And so I thought we would just kind of tackle some of the reasons why you should definitely start a podcast. The first thing I wanted to kind of touch on is that podcasting is really growing, and if you can't tell by just the sheer number of podcasts that there are in your podcast app as you're trying to find podcasts, it's really, really growing. And I'm actually going to include a link in the show notes about this that has some info on the podcast boom, as they're calling it, and why, it's growing so much. But it's really gaining speed. And so I always tell people, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, you should do it now. It's a really exciting time to be a podcaster, but you need to jump in now and save your seat at the table, because it's only going to keep growing, and you want to grab your audience now before there's 50 more of you, or, however many more. And so I definitely think, don't hesitate if you're thinking about starting a podcast. I would totally jump in and do it. And don't let the tech parts and, the cost scare you. It's relatively easy to start a podcast. I say relatively easy, and I definitely kind of want to keep things in perspective because, there's obviously several ways you can start a podcast or you can do a podcast. And I'm sitting in my office with a microphone plugged into my laptop and some headphones on, and that's how I am recording my podcast. I am not in a sound booth. I'm not going to be in a sound booth. I'm not going to build a sound booth. That's not the kind of podcaster that I am. I am what I like to call an at-home podcaster. And so really, you don't have to have a lot of fancy equipment to start. You can sit down, press record on QuickTime, and you can record an episode today. And I think that can really hold people back as well. You don't have to have fancy equipment. I do recommend that you get a microphone, and you can order one off of Amazon. And there are a couple that I like. And, that's a really great place to start. It doesn't have to be expensive. Pretty much the only other things you're going to have to pay for is a hosting service and possibly some music to use, right? Okay, so relatively easy startup and cost. Okay, but why should you start a podcast? Well, I want you to think about what your podcast is about or what you're hoping to get out of it. Maybe it's just for fun. And if you enjoy recording and doing this kind of stuff, I'm going to tell you right now, podcasting is fun. I love doing it. I love connecting with my audience. I love meeting people who've heard me. I mean, it's such a cool experience. And I don't have to put on makeup to do it, which I really appreciate it. But it's just a lot of fun. So if you even think you would enjoy it and you have the time, you should totally go for it. Now, if you're a business owner, there are some other reasons why you should start a podcast. And I'm going to kind of talk about those specifically for a minute. One of those things is that you're ready to connect with your people and your customers in a new way. So as I mentioned before, one of the things that I love about podcasting is how we have been able to connect with people on a different level. And I really, really think that that is something valuable. As business owners and content creators, we're constantly throwing stuff out there, throwing it at the wall, hoping it sticks. And podcasting for us has really, really stuck. I mean, it just really has. And I'm not saying that because I'm a podcast editor. I'm saying that because we've been able to find our community, find our people, and really connect with them in a deep and meaningful way through the podcast. Now, that also means that we do have a Facebook group where a lot of activity happens, but most of the activity centers around the podcast episodes, and we kind of use those as like the anchor for anything else that we do. So even if we're developing something else outside of the podcast, I don't know, maybe that's a workshop or a live video in the Facebook group or something like that, I'm always going to anchor it or tie it back into the podcast episode that we released. And so it's been a really amazing way for us to share content. And it's also like not a blog post. So I feel like writing blog posts can feel like pulling teeth sometimes. And the great thing about the podcast is that, we can just sit down and we can talk, and whatever comes out, and we can edit it and we can put it up, and there you go. We do write show notes, which in and of itself is a blog post, but I really feel like that people are more on the go and they're looking for ways to get their content, faster. They want it faster, they want it easier, and audio is such a great way to do that because it doesn't require much from your audience to participate, right? They just need a device. They can be doing other things. I mean, I know a lot of moms who listen to podcasts while they're cleaning. I like to listen to them in the car, so anyways, I just feel like podcasting itself just allows you to connect with people in a different way. The other thing that I would say too about podcasting is that, if you do it a certain way, it gives you an easier avenue of creating content, and you can then repurpose that content in multiple ways. And I will do another episode one day about repurposing podcast content. But if you're a business owner and you're thinking about starting a podcast, I want you to really think about what is the point of it or what you are trying to get people to do. And so you can't just just do an episode about whatever X service that you do. You need to do an episode that relates to that service. And then how are you going to funnel people back into your business, right? So you kind of have to think about all of those things. But if you can do it right and you can be thoughtful about the content that you are putting out there in your podcast, it can really serve you. So another really cool thing about podcasting is that it gives people an avenue to use their voice. And if you feel like you have something to say or you have something that you really want to share with the world, podcasting is such a great way to do it. You're behind a microphone. I think YouTube, I've tried YouTube. I haven't given up on it yet, but it's a little different because there is video involved. So it is you in front of a camera. But I do love the fact that you can kind of hide behind your microphone. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a, I'm sitting down right now. I'm in a plaid shirt and a ponytail. I've been running around today. I don't have any makeup on. And I'm sitting down and I'm able to just get this out and create an episode, create some content, put it out into the world. I have a lot of friends who want to start podcasts about something that is meaningful to them, but they are shy about it. And, this kind of gives you a way of being shy about it, but also getting it out into the world. And so if you feel like you have something to say, please say it. There is space for everyone. And I want to kind of hit that for a minute. Everybody has something unique to say. Everybody does, because we're all individuals. We all come from different places. We all have different backgrounds, different walks of life, all of that. We all have something unique to say. So even if you feel like that podcast has already been done, maybe, but did it come from you? No. And so that is something that I think is so amazing. So I always love to hear when people are starting their podcast. I want to hear what it's about. And I'll talk to people and they'll say, oh, I'm just a coach. I'm just a I'm just a business owner, but I don't know, maybe it'll work. And I'm like, of course it will work. It will work because it's coming from you. And so you have to approach it that way. The thing is like, and I'll say it a million times on this podcast, and you'll probably hear me say it a million times more, but podcasting has opened so many doors for me. And I don't think it's because it created a new business for me. I don't think it's because I learned a new skill. I really think it's because it gave me an avenue to share my voice and to grow in confidence and grow that voice. And I think that's really where the value lies. Yes, it is a free medium, but there are still so many values that you can get out of it as a podcaster that you probably haven't even thought of. Again, like we've been able to create such an amazing community with our podcast, and that has been such a joy and has brought more opportunities. And I really think that's key. Like you have to look at it long term. You can't just throw out 3 episodes and then hope that that's, the golden ticket. It's something that you have to do over time. And so if you have the time, if you have the desire, if you have the topic in your mind, if you feel like you want to share your words and share your voice and share your perspective on the world, then why wouldn't you start a podcast? Because now is the time to do it. And so my encouragement to you is if you are even considering starting a podcast, I want you to just sit down, get out your QuickTime or whatever, is on your computer. And I want you to record an episode and see how it feels and see what you think. And let me know. I would love to know. I am just so passionate about it, and I would love to hear how it helps and affects you. So that is why you should start a podcast, because it's amazing, because it's so fun, because I love it, because I'm sitting here like smiling as I'm recording this. Just a quick little life update for those of you who are wondering. If you've been following me on Instagram, I highly suggest you do. I love to do some Instagram lives there. My Instagram is @CarolineCreates. And as of the time of this recording, I'm still living in an empty house with no furniture. So it's definitely been an adventure, a journey. I just did a podcast episode on the Creative Biz Rebellion podcast, which is my podcast. And that episode number was episode 78, Running a Business When Life is Crazy. And I'm going to link to that episode in the show notes. I really encourage you to go listen to that episode. I talk about how crazy nuts life has been the last few months for me, and how I've been able to run a business and keep everything moving and growing. And I will definitely talk a little bit more about that on this podcast, but I highly suggest you go listen to that. I think it's a great place to start. So I hope you have a wonderful day. If you have any podcasting questions, please email me hello@carolinecreates.com. And I would love to hear if you're thinking about starting a podcast. What podcast are you thinking about starting? Shoot me an email. Let me know. I would love to hear what's holding you back from starting your podcast. What pain points are there for you? So let me know, and I will see you guys next week. Before you go, please head to Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. I would love to hear from you. And to learn more about me and follow along my journey, head to www.carolinecreates.com. There you can also listen to episodes, watch YouTube videos, and find out more about my podcasting services. Thanks so much. Have a great day.